There's a Carmelite nun in England, Sister Ruth Burroughs is her name, and I've used some of her material before, and in looking at it for this week, I realized she died last November, and she was 100. You know, when someone gets to that age, you just think they're going to live forever. Like you think, oh wait, she died? She made it to 100. And she was an amazing spiritual master. One of the fun stories of her was one of her books came out, and on the back of the book cover it said, you know, one of England's great spiritual guides, and she kind of snorted at it, and someone said, why do you say that? You know, you do so much spiritual direction. She said, most of the direction I do is just telling people to behave themselves. That's about all I really do for people. And yet, there's so much that she said and offered. And as I was going through this week, I wasn't sure if I was going to use some of her stuff with you. And as this morning would have it, I was checking a few things online, checking in with partners on the other side of the world, seeing how things went there. And I see a post from a guy I was a waiter with in college. And he's worked in TV and in the arts. He used to be part of HGTV. And I see now he's co-producing a show on Broadway. I thought, oh, so cool to see. And Stereophonics, if you're heading to Broadway, you want to see it. But so I'm just kind of chatting him. And then I see that he has a friend running in the London Marathon, and Father Zobler's running in the London Marathon. So I add his friend's bib number to my little app so I can see Father Zobler. And his friend Kelly, they're like, I don't know, on the map, they're this far apart. They're like running right next to each other in that moment. It was kind of cool. And so I'm like, I'm definitely using Sister Ruth's stuff that today because she lived near London. But what she said that I think is so important for us is always at the root of how we see Jesus. I think there's always that part of us that wants to keep him at an arm's distance. Sometimes I use that image of like if you're watching him on the way of the cross, we tend to move to the sidelines, like watching a parade, right? There he goes, and we got our foam fingers on, go Jesus, go, go. But he never asked us to be fans of his. He asked us to be followers of his. And if we're going to follow him, that means the way of the cross is ours. And that never makes us very comfortable. And what Sister Ruth said was, why is God the Father so enamored with Jesus laying down his life? Why is he so enamored with that? And sometimes when I talk to Christians, I always want to make sure what their sort of base level theology is around this. Because if it's rooted in just the expiation of sin, right, that Jesus died because we sinned and we needed someone to cover the bill, if you want, and that's a level or a layer of what we're talking about. But that cannot be where it begins and ends. Well, at least not for me. I don't want to spend eternity with someone who's got such a small vision of how things work that, you know, I made everyone and they made huge mistakes for millennia, and so I sent my son to cover the tab, and now I'm okay with you. But there is a whole group of people for whom that's, you know, Jesus died for our sins. But before Jesus dies for our sins, there is the love of God that brought us into existence, and there's the love of God that is this self-sacrificing, laying oneself down for others. Because if it's not love, then as I said, I don't know what it is. But I do think it's important that we be clear about how this works. Because in the end, where I think God ends up being limited is that he needs an outlet for his love. But that outlet has to be as pure as possible. And I don't mean pure in any other sense than an open vessel or an instrument that isn't clogged. And that is only accomplished when we die to self. It's when self is in the way that God is limited in how he can express his love to this world. And so that's what's so critical about what Jesus is saying here. What's so critical about the cross in the first place is to say, because then Jesus says it, I lay it down of my own will. I'm choosing this. And in case we were confused, there he is in the Gospel of Mark, sweating blood and directly asking, is there another way to do this? But in the end, not my will, but yours, right? Let this cup pass me, if that's possible, but not my will, but yours. And the will, by the way, isn't that he just die. The will is the love of God's people and that expression of that love and faith. And so there it is for us. Are we going to get on our way of every day doing that? I've teased at you for a few months now that thing around the 5 truths of life. And a couple people came up and said, hey, you've never covered them all. I know. I do a whole parish mission on it. And you have to pay for it. You can't just get these things for free. Here they are. You'll have to go back and get them on your own. Life's hard. You're not important. Your life's not about you. You're not in control. And you're going to die. Enjoy them. Those are the 5 truths of life. I don't care where you live, what language you speak, what God you worship. Those things are just true. Get over it. And when you travel around the world, you see most people have no trouble with these truths. It's really only in the world where we've been so blessed that we fight them. Life's hard. You're not important. Life's not about you. You're not in control, and you're going to die. And the you're going to die isn't just the physical death. It's the laying down your life every day in all the situations that come in front of you. And then and only then can God's powerful love really come through us to others. So we become the limit of how God, or how people experience God's love. And you and I, the more we practice it, the easier it is. And the more we practice it, the more we can trust Him. But it has to start on some level with just blind in the darkness trust. I can tell you that it works, but until you step out into that abyss once to try it and test it and taste and see the goodness of the Lord, there's no substitute for it. There's no cheating. There's no answer in the back of the book. You just have to do it. And when we do it, we come to trust a bit more. Do we trust completely? No. How often in the gospel does something amazing happen and it says, they began to believe in Him? They began to? How much more power do they need to see? And forget the scriptures for a second. Forget everything the church teaches. Everything you know about science has been screaming to you about resurrection from the beginning of time. As simple as evaporation, all the shuns. Evaporation, condensation, sublimation, hibernation. All of these things are about resurrection. The 4 seasons, the life cycle of salmon. Heck, the life cycle of galaxies is wrapped around resurrection. You and I don't need to believe in resurrection. We just need to acknowledge that it's happening all around us and then be taught by it. We've got the caterpillar mind, and we can't possibly imagine what a butterfly is because we're locked in small, just like I said to the kids. I've got other flocks. I've often submitted that I think that might be about aliens. If there are aliens, there's your scriptural support for it, right? I got other flocks. You know nothing about them. I don't know what he meant by that, but sometimes kids, what if they're aliens? No problem. We've just got a bigger territory to cover in our evangelization. Because Jesus' death and resurrection is a universally salvific act. Not an act in Ohio, not an act in the U.S. His suffering, death, and resurrections for the universe because that truth is being taught in the universe. New stars come from old stardust. They resurrect. So then how about us? Why don't I trust more in the amazing things I've seen that should launch me into the next step of just surrendering and trusting God more and more? There's just something. I think it's that we're made in the image and likeness of God. And so there's that truth. You're not in control. It doesn't matter how secure I get. It doesn't matter what job I work, what neighborhood I live in, how much money I have. In the end, I'm not in control. As I said, you know who doesn't struggle with that teaching? People who have nothing. How many times have I preached to you? The great prophet Janis Joplin, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose, right? To be completely set free. And in part is to say, no matter what you have, no matter how God has blessed you in the material world, to just go, that's just gift. And the more I try to white knuckle hold on to that, the more it owns me. I don't own it because you're not in control. And just back up a truth. Your life's not about you anyway. You'll find more joy when you embrace that truth. Your life's not about you. We are all in this together. If we're going to find those other flocks that he has, then we have to go through those. So we don't have to believe in resurrection. We just have to look around and go, there it is, there it is, there it is, there it is. And then what does it have to teach me? And how will that strengthen my family? How will that strengthen our community? How does that strengthen our world? And it's right in this mystery of this Eucharist. You and I can't know this in its fullness. We can know it in its fullness, but not in its totality. Let me say it that way. It has something to teach us each and every time we receive it. Because it's beyond us. And if we want to be a more perfect instrument, if you think of the instruments over here in our music worship, if the flute's stuffed with paper, if the strings of the piano have books on top of them, we'll never hear them as they were designed to be heard. What we want is to be the best instrument possible. And what Jesus said, and more importantly, what he did, was to lay down his life, not just on the cross, but each and every day. So that when we leave here, it's committed to that. And when we practice it in small ways, we have a chance to really testify it in big ways, if big ways come our way. But even if they don't, every day we'll testify to what resurrection is. Our parents choosing to bring us into existence and the sacrifice it takes to love a child, sacrifice it takes to have a community here, the sacrifice to think of others first. All those things I just said are happening when simple bread and wine become his presence for us. We are hungry, but what we're hungry for is not more stuff. What we're hungry for is the bread of life. And as we eat his flesh and drink his blood, we believe a bit more and are strengthened a bit more to lay down our lives for our brothers and sisters. Jesus did not say, greater love hath no man than to love God more and more. What he said was, greater love hath no man than to lay down his life for his friends. He didn't just say it, he did it. And he's asking us to follow him, not be fans of him. So today's a new opportunity. Whatever else happened yesterday or for the last 100 years, today's our opportunity to say, yes, Lord, that's what I want. It scares me a little bit because I don't know what that's going to ask of me. But I trust in you, Jesus, because you've already conquered it. I just need to trust a little bit more today. I need to turn to those around me, maybe grab their hands and say, help me. I'm scared today, or I can't see where this is going. But we as a community will help lead each other to the life and the light and the resurrection. May God be praised.